Well, welcome everyone. Let's get started. It's 12:01. I want to be respectful of your time today. So welcome and thank you for joining us for this information session on how to become a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives. So just to give you a quick background, I am Andrea Pastor. I have had my credential for 3 years. I'm actually in my recertification process now, so we'll talk about that more at the end. Here is our agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to go through all of these things, and hopefully by the end, you'll feel confident and ready to proceed, hopefully with our cohort for the summer.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. So just to start talking through some of the values and benefits of becoming a fellow of the association. So you're going to demonstrate your healthcare leadership competencies. This really is a great option for those of you looking at advancing your healthcare career. It demonstrates to employers that you have a true understanding. So that's great. You have a lifelong commitment to change and improvement. You're strengthening your leadership value to your organization. We offer a lot of education, and you will always have the latest and greatest information on the healthcare field. So it's really great for you to have that knowledge. You will have the opportunity to engage with many other members of the association, whether at the national level or state. I can share with you, if you're not already aware, our state offers a lot of opportunities to engage, either just through engagement and mingling or education at a much reduced cost, which is really great. And then you'll be recognized for your achievement. We'll talk about how you'll be recognized, but lots of opportunities there. And then lastly, it's an achievement of, satisfaction that you were able to get through this, and you have that badge that you can show that you have that recognition. You will receive a pin once you have completed your exam. I proudly wear mine on my name badge at work. So just know that there's all sorts of ways that you can recognize that accomplishment. So let's start talking about eligibility. So there are some things that you must do in order to be eligible to sit for the exam. So you're going to want to have awareness of that before you dive too deep. But we're here to be a resource to you and make sure that you move through that process successfully. So you must be a current member of the association for 1 year as a full ACHE member. So you can also be a faculty or associate international member. However, in order to apply, you do have to convert your membership over. So if you're an associate or international faculty member, that time that you've been with the association counts towards your 1 year. However, in order to sit for the exam, you have to convert your membership to full membership. In terms of student memberships, those do not count towards your tenure. So they're really great for giving you exposure to the association. However, you need to convert to a full membership and have that for 1 year prior to sitting for the exam. In terms of education, you must have a master's or other post-baccalaureate degree. So you will need to provide a copy of your diploma or final transcript to prove that you've completed that schooling. Examples are listed below. So just know that you don't have to be a business prepared leader in order to sit for the exam. We've had physicians in the past. We've had people come from all different genres within the healthcare industry. So as long as you have a master's level degree or above, or even a doctorate degree, you're welcome to sit for the exam. Now, in terms of healthcare experience, this is the second part. You are expected to hold an executive level healthcare management position and have 5 years of experience in the healthcare management field. So you will, as a part of your application process on the portal, need to submit a copy of your job description, a copy of the org chart, and your resume. So now if you're thinking, well, I might come as a non-traditional executive, we give some examples of things that do qualify. So obviously, if you're sitting in the C-suite, it's a fairly no-brainer, vice presidents, those types of things. But department directors, leadership roles within the organization, demonstrating that you have oversight and management and leadership responsibilities will qualify. Positions that will not qualify, just for some more reference. So coordinators, analysts, specialists, residencies, internships. If you're in that level, or if you're just doing project management, that does not qualify. So again, if you provide all of those copies of those things, you'll upload those into the portal and it will help you work through whether or not you qualify. If you have questions, Ashley and I could be a resource to you, but also I'll give you some resources at the end about how you can reach out to the association and they can talk through with you about how to do that. And again, I will provide those later in the presentation. So the next area of eligibility is obtaining some references. So you'll need 2 references as part of your application. One is a structured interview from a current fellow. So hopefully you know some people in the fellowship land. However, if you don't, we can help point you to some of those people. I am a fellow, so I can certainly be a resource. It's a very structured interview. We'll show you kind of some of those questions on the next slide, but just know it's very structured. You'll know what's being asked ahead of time. So you can prepare for it, and you and I, or whoever you find as a fellow that can do that with you, will go through that. The next one is from either a fellow or a senior leader from your organization. So that will be more of a reference that they can provide in writing. You can have a sit-down interview and talk through it, but they'll just provide that online in writing. Both of these references will be submitted online. So you can see on this blue box on your screen, it's kind of showing you what the portal looks like. And you'll see highlighted in white, submit a reference for a candidate. You can actually provide this link to your reference at your organization. They click on the thing, I think it's a pop-up box. They can either copy and paste their already written Word document or whatever it is into that. They enter a little bit of information about who you are, who they are, and then they can submit it. Having gone through the process, it's pretty straightforward, so easy peasy. And then with your fellow structured interview, also you're going to want to have them do this electronically. So here on this slide, you can see what those questions are. So you're both going to have this in front of you before you even do it, so you can prepare as mentioned. They will type up kind of a summary of your answers, and then as listed below, there's a link that they can submit the answers to that structured interview reference for you. Okay, any questions about that? So next section of eligibility requirements. In terms of continuing education, you need to have 36 continuing education credits related to healthcare management and administration within 3 years prior to applying. So ACHE specifically has some requirements for how those are broken out. So at a minimum, you need to have 12 in-person ACHE sponsored credits. It's how I like to describe it is it's sort of in hierarchy. So in-person credits are the most important. If you end up with 48 of those, that's great. If you ever go to a congress where it's a 2 or 3 day conference, you can get all of your credits in one congress. It's great. However, for those of us who don't travel and we need to find as much in-person sessions as possible, watch for those ACHE Minnesota emails that come out telling you about how you can get education within our state and where you can go to get that. There's a lot of opportunity to fulfill those credit requirements just locally here in Minnesota. So again, you need to have 12 in-person credits, 12 ACHE virtual interactive credits, and then you can have up to 12 qualifying credits. So that might be, if you have a nursing background and you have some nursing education credits, those can qualify for that qualifying credit. Or if you go to a healthcare conference that's not sponsored by ACHE, those would likely qualify. But at the minimum, you have to have 12 in person, and then those can roll down, and you can have 12 up to 12 virtual, and then up to 12 qualifying. Did I say that correct? We have a demonstration here in a minute that's going to walk you through some of those ways to look at it once you start submitting. So as you can see, again, it kind of is that trickle down. The in-person can trickle down and qualify for the virtual. The virtual can trickle down if you have too many and use to be your qualifying, but they don't go backwards. So if you don't have a minimum of 12, they don't roll up. If you have 24 virtual, it's not going to help you. You've got to have at a minimum 12 in person and then 12 virtual, or those in person can roll and qualify for virtual and so on. It goes down, but not up. I hope that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Here's that table that we were talking about. So here's what when you start submitting them in the portal, this is what it's going to look like. So you can kind of see here, different ways that you can spread it out and what qualifies and what doesn't. I think what's most interesting is to explain to you how it doesn't qualify so you understand that dynamic. So, and the two bottom rows, you see this person had 6 in person, 18 virtual, and 12 qualifying. It does not meet the minimum requirements because at a minimum, you have to have 12 in person. So then at the bottom, you see they have 20 in person, which is awesome. Only 2 virtual, but they have 14 qualifying. Now, the reason why this still doesn't qualify is because at maximum is 12 qualifying. So you have to have ACHE credits in order to meet that 36 total. Does that make sense to everybody? The max qualifying you can have is 12. That counts. Like we might have more than that, but it doesn't count towards that 36 total. All right, next area of eligibility is volunteerism. So it's really important from ACHE's perspective that we are serving our communities outside of our job. So as a part of your application process, you are expected to report 2 community or civic volunteer activities that you do, and then 2 healthcare related activities that you do. They give you some really great examples of things that can qualify. I just want you to know, if you coach your child's little league team or you do something like that, that qualifies, that absolutely qualifies. If you're doing something to support your church or a local, if you're a member of the Rotary and you're doing volunteer work through that, or the Elks, or, those types of programs, that qualifies. So just don't sell yourself short on activities you do in your community. And then also with your healthcare related volunteer work, if you're serving on a board for example, I serve on the advisory board for my college's program that I graduated from. That's considered volunteer work that you're doing in the healthcare related field. If you're serving at a blood drive, if your organization sponsors a health fair and you do some volunteer work, there's lots of things that qualify. So just be thinking about that. And if you need to get into something over the summer, you've got time to do it. So I believe you have to have these set by December 1st to be eligible for the year, if I'm not mistaken. There's something on one of the slides that outlines that.
Yeah, the only thing to be thinking about is if you want to put in your application in order to get that waiver, then you would want to have that beforehand, but you got plenty of time still.
So our next slide is showing you, if you haven't logged in yet, which maybe you haven't, if you sign up for the portal, if you're already a member, you can log into the portal, and this is what that application progress tool is going to look like. So it has a nice, every section that you can see from membership, advanced degree, all those things that we just talked about. You go through each one, you upload the documents that support that you're meeting that criteria. Once you submit everything you need, you get the green check mark. Now, the tool is not smart enough to know that the documents you're actually submitting meet that qualification. So you might be submitting an org chart and your job description, but what we might find out is maybe you don't have enough years of experience. It's not smart enough to know that. So once you submit everything, somebody from the national office does do a full review of everything that you submitted to make sure you actually qualify. And they will reach out if there's any questions or confusion. And they're here to help you qualify. So I don't want you to think that just because you got a call from them, you won't qualify to take the exam. They're just going to help you walk through what you may need to provide as additional documentation. So moving on to the application process. So we kind of showed you those screens and what they look like to hit the qualification. Once you have qualified and you meet all the minimum requirements, there's a couple different ways that you can do the application. So on the website, if you see the highlighted section, you can click on that. And then there is an opportunity to start or continue my application. If you are logged into your own portal, so if you log in as you, on your menu screen, you will see, as noted, apply. So then you will go through that application and get that submitted. It's pretty straightforward. Now, the next steps of that application process are kind of in 3 steps. So number 1, in order to be eligible to even select that option, you need to meet those minimum requirements that we talked about. Once you submit your application, there is a $250 application fee due upon submission. That goes over to the national office. They confirm that the eligibility requirements have been met, and then they will authorize you to sit for that Board of Governors exam. That application is now valid for 2 years. So you have 2 years to pass your exam. If you complete, well, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse here. Once you are set up for that exam, if you register for your exam, the fee for that exam is $225. You pay that at the time that you register. Then it will go to Pearson VUE with an authorization. So then they will schedule your information. You get an email with that exam authorization, and then you can schedule your exam. So there are Pearson VUE facilities all over the United States, all over Minnesota. But what I can tell you, and we talk about this in a future slide as well, because this is a 6-hour exam slot, they aren't as easy to get into as some of the other exams. So as an example, when I was at my testing facility, I saw people coming and going out of my exam area all day long because other exams are 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. So this is a very long exam slot, so it's harder to get into those. So just keep that in mind. So this is the great thing about being a part of this. Oh, oops. Yes. So $250 is the fee for the application. You pay that when you submit your application fee. $225 is the cost of the exam. If you submit your application by anywhere, now is the eligibility window, until June 30th, they will authorize a $225 waiver for your first exam, first attempt at your exam. So when they send you the authorization, they give you a code, almost like a sale code, that says that this is the fee for the exam has been waived. But you have to get that in by June 30th. So it's kind of a nice deal if you can get that done. And I will tell you, we will provide you with reminders so you don't forget to get that submitted by June 30th. So let's talk about the exam itself. So you kind of have some anticipation of what that looks like. So next slide, Ashley. There we go. Thank you. So the exam consists of 230 multiple choice questions. Of those 230, you're only scored on 200 of them. And then 30 are pilot questions that they're evaluating if people understand them, the accuracy percentages of getting the questions right to use for future years that they would actually score those questions. Of those 230 questions, they are broken out into 10 knowledge areas or domains. And you have, as mentioned earlier, 6 hours to complete the exam. So that's where it does get a little bit tricky getting a 6-hour slot at the exam facility. So if you want to understand kind of what the breakout of the exam looks like, the first to the least of how many questions you're asked of those 230 questions. Now, you'll see on this demonstration, you're only scored on 200 of those. So this is the breakout. You will have 30 questions specific to healthcare, 26 questions around management and leadership, and so on and so forth. So you can kind of see what that breakout looks like. So the exam is pass or fail. If you are interested, we talked earlier about how you can be recognized. If you take and pass your exam by December 31st of this year, you'll be eligible to participate in the 2026 convocation ceremony. That happens every year at Congress. As you can see in kind of the photo that's blurred in the back, you wear your full regala and you go through, and it's kind of like a graduation ceremony. From what I understand, I missed it because I went through this during the COVID era window still, and so I wasn't able to get there, but it's very ceremonial. It's a great recognition. So just to give you some statistics, the first time pass rate is 66%. So something to be aware of, and we'll give you tips on how to increase your pass rate. So the passing score is around 65%. That's a pretty low score if you think back to high school grading. However, don't be discouraged. You know, it's a very difficult test. So just know that you can try again. You can take the test as many times as you want in that 2-year window. But there is a 60-day waiting period between those those examinations. So you have to have a 60-day waiting period. So one thing that really makes a difference in that pass fail rate that we've studied over the past several years of our cohorts that go through the class, and I'll talk more about this in a few slides, but it's really important that you participate. And the more you give this summer cohort program, the more you'll get out of it. And we watch those pass rates on the first try go way up. So just know that, and we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. So in terms of preparing for your exam, there are a lot of resources available to you. So it's commonly recommended that you start by assessing your current knowledge area in each of those domains, and we have some resources for you to do that. Next, you're going to want to prepare by giving yourself 3 to 6 months to study and to get prepped for that exam. A lot of this is unique to each individual, so determine what's the most effective study style for you. It's not a one-size-fits-all, obviously, but we try to provide as many resources to you as possible so you'll be successful. And then you're going to want to make sure you review those 10 key knowledge areas and then practice questions because they are job related and experience based. However, one thing to have awareness of, your experience is going to lead you in having some areas that you're stronger in and less strong in. But regardless of those knowledge areas and what you come to the table with, please know that the questions are focused on, it's not regional. So in Minnesota or Wisconsin or, our Midwest area, we may look at something a specific way. They really are looking at it at a national level. How do we, think about when you were in graduate school and how you prepared those theoretical scenarios and how you would apply them versus how you actually apply them in the job setting. There is somewhat of a difference sometimes. So you're going to want to take yourself out of like, this is how I do things at my work or how the policies are outlined at my organization, and step back from that and remind yourself that how do we look at this as a national test? Because whether you take the test in Mississippi or Minnesota, the test questions are going to be the same. And so there are some regional variances in how we approach a problem or a scenario, but the test questions are built to be universal. So hopefully that helps kind of give you some perspective on that. So in terms of some of those preparation resources, there is a link here in the slide again, which Ashley will send out after the session today, that gives you an exam content outline. So you at your own leisure can take a look at that and see, it's a great starting point. There's also a competency assessment tool, which I mentioned earlier. So take a look at that. That helps kind of give you some perspective on areas that maybe you're really strong in and you don't need to spend as much time in, and then the areas that you really need to focus. And then the creme de la creme, everyone, why we're here today is to talk about our Minnesota Fellow Advancement Program, which is what we can do to help you prepare over the summer to gear up to take that test by the end of the calendar year. So nationally, there are several resources of which we will provide you copies, virtual copies if you're a part of our cohort for the summer. So we have a 4-book study set, flashcards, and then there's bundles that you can purchase yourself. So you're welcome to do that even though we provide you those virtual resources. You can purchase hardcover books if that's what your preference is. So like I said, everyone has a different style. So it's up to you what you want to do. So our virtual lunch and learn sessions that you can sign up for are beginning May 29th. They will be facilitated by the 3 of us you see on the screen here. But really, they are going to be led by all of you. So what we are going to do, we help facilitate and walk you through the question and answer session, but you will each be presenting on one of those content areas, one of those domains. So it's going to be every Thursday throughout the summer months. And I think we actually have a schedule somewhere that we'll show you in a minute. But essentially it's 11 weeks of these lunch and learn sessions. As mentioned, the participants, you all who potentially will be in the sessions, will team up. There might be, depending on the number of people in each session, you might team up with another person in the cohort and co-present a content area. So in order to participate, you would want to make sure that you're going to meet all the criteria so that you can sit for the exam before December 1st. Now, Ashley and I talked about earlier, The only caveat is if you want to save that $225 fee for the test, you're going to want to actually be qualified and submit everything by June 30th. So as mentioned, you're going to prepare and present one of those 10 domain areas. Now, I know that might sound intimidating, but we have the baseline content already prepared for you in PowerPoint presentations. What we ask you to do is obviously prepare by digging in and making sure you have understanding of that content that you're going to present, but also bring your own experiences to it. Bring some like real life perspective to how it applies, because all of us come with different backgrounds. The background of a physician sitting in on this versus a CEO versus a lab director are all going to come with different perspectives on how the healthcare platform works on a day-to-day basis. We've had people from the state of Minnesota come participate, their perspectives on how it works, insurance executives, like wherever you're coming from, you're going to have different perspectives. So a lot of that real life learning that gives us all like a broader knowledge of healthcare is what we all bring to the table. So that's really fun to hear those stories and those examples that people bring when they present. We would like to see that you are taking that Board of Governors exam by December 30th. I think it is a requirement of this program. So please plan for that. Again, the best way to succeed in taking the test and passing it on the first try is to really schedule that exam, within 6 to 8 weeks after the end of the sessions, because the longer you wait, the rusty your brain gets, it becomes distant. If we're starting in May and you're not taking it till December, that's a long time from that first presentation to the last. So you just want to set yourself up with the best chance to pass that exam. So the sooner after we're done, where everything's still fresh in your mind, the better. So this is a schedule of what the cohort is going to look like. So the program registration deadline, if you're interested in participating, is going to be May 9th. And then, as mentioned, we start on May 29th, and every Thursday, with the exception of 4th of July week. We do take a week off for 4th of July, and then we gear right back up again, and then we end in August. So again, we have that deadline for you of that June 30th, and we will send out reminders just to make sure no one forgets that 30th of June is when you want to have all your information submitted so you get that waiver for the exam. Okay, so we're going to go through this. You're all going to pass, and then you have a 3-year cycle for your recertification. So there's 2 options for how you recertify. As mentioned earlier, I am in my recertification period right now. So you either need to have those education credits, as we mentioned earlier. So it's the same rules that we talked about and went through all those examples earlier. And then you do still need to provide examples of how you're volunteering in the community. So you'll need 2 healthcare volunteer activities and then 2 community or civic activities. And then there is a $200 recertification fee as a part of that. The other option, so your second option, if you are not able to get all your education credits in, you can retake your Board of Governors exam. I've never heard of anyone doing that, but my circle is small. I think we all try to get our education in. It's a long test, and at least for me, we have to drive a ways to get to an exam center. So if you can just do those ongoing education credits and get them in, that's your best shot. And then you still have your $200 recertification fee plus the cost of the exam. So as mentioned, it seems like the easier option to just get the education in, but each person's unique. It has unique circumstances. So whatever it takes for you.
It has been done this last year.
Okay.
Had a local CEO that just couldn't get in the credits and did retake it and pass. So
there you go. Okay.
It's an option.
Yep, it is an option. That's for sure. So, Ashley already mentioned this, but here is those resources at the national level that you can ask questions if you have specific questions about eligibility, how to submit something. If you had a question about your references, you certainly could reach out proactively to these resources. However, you can submit all your application and then they would just call you if they had a question. So if you're confident that your resources or your references were meeting the criteria, then you can feel free to submit and they'll reach out when they do their review of your application.
And they added this concierge option last year, and that's really a good, I think, a good option if you're like, I don't know about my management experience, does it qualify?
Mhm.
And then do a concierge appointment and just talk it out with them and see if that's going to be something that works for you.
Perfect. So if you have questions about our summer program, now is your time to ask. So any questions about that, things you're worried about if you should join our crew this summer or not. So one thing to think about, just as a tip, if you are thinking you are going to proceed with our summer program, the sooner you sign up, you can get your first dibs in to say, I want to present on a certain topic. Now, I think it's everyone's nature to say, oh, I'm really strong in human resource management or informatics or whatever it might be. So I'll go for that one. But what I would challenge you to do is actually present on one of your least comfortable topics, because that forces you to really dig in and learn it to be able to present it. And it only helps you prepare actually better, because then you're a more active, engaged participant of that information that maybe you aren't as naturally have that strength in.
So what we do is we'll open it up. I'll get it posted tomorrow. And so I will put on there, the first week is for Minnesota members. It won't fill. We do 20 spots. We do limit it because we want this to be an impactful program for you guys. And 20 is kind of, it keeps it at that level.
Sweet spot.
But
Mhm.
last year it was half Wisconsin. So it's
Mhm.
like Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then we still had East and West Coast. So we opened it up nationwide. So
Mhm.
we do have others join us, which is great for perspectives in the presentations. So look for that. If you don't follow us on LinkedIn, do that. But I'll post, that the registration is open. So if you do click on it, you'll see ACHE members is open, and then you'll see that another ticket isn't open yet. Like it goes
Gotcha.
online and then you'll be able to register once that goes live. So yeah, we are happy to have you join us. Anyone across the nation.
Thank you
Yeah.
for joining us. Please know Ashley is really responsive. So if you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me as well. But generally speaking, Ashley is all things program, getting you registered and getting you set up to join our cohort this summer. So we hope to see you all there.